A grief-stricken woman came to the cemetery to visit her long-deceased son and saw a little boy near the grave, whispering something and crying, when the boy lifted his head to show his face. Hannelore entered her son's room, glanced around, sighed, smiled softly, and quietly said, "I'll tidy up here, Ansel. Maybe I'll throw away something unnecessary. It's been 5 years, my little boy. 5 years without you." 5 years ago, Ansel, Hannelore's son, had tragically passed away. And today she had decided to sort through his belongings, untouched all these years. Everything had remained as it was during his life. Even now her hands trembled, unwilling to disrupt the order Ansel had left behind. Still, she took a stack of books and notebooks from the shelf, placed them on the table, and began sorting through them. A brightly coloured card slipped out, one that Ansel had evidently saved for a long-past occasion. Hannelore turned it over and read the words written in her son's handwriting. "Mommy, I love you." The woman staggered. The pain, still raw after 5 years, struck her heart again. She leaned against the wall, but her legs gave way, and she slid helplessly to the floor. She wanted to scream again like she had back then. "No, this can't be true!" But she already knew it wouldn't help. The pain, now permanently lodged in her soul, could not be released. Her son, a young, handsome, healthy boy, had just turned 16 when he died. He had his whole life ahead of him. A long, happy life full of love and success. She had been certain of it, as had everyone else. Ansel had been adored by all. But it wasn't meant to be. Was it fate, or just cruel misfortune? After catching her breath from yet another wave of grief, Hannelore looked around the room again. "I will never see you as an adult," she whispered. "You'd be 21 now. Maybe this room would look different. Maybe you'd have moved out and started your own life. But no, everything here has stayed the same. You'll never marry. I'll never have grandchildren. I'll never have anything. You left, and you didn't come back. My time stopped with you." The merciless tide of memory pulled Hannelore back to that final day, their last hours together. Ansel had been getting ready for a camping trip with his classmates. He was part of an adventure club, and they often went on outings. Everything had always been fine before, but this time they were going farther away for 2 whole weeks. It felt like too long. Hannelore had helped her son pack, but her heart was filled with an inexplicable anxiety. She didn't want to upset Ansel with her doubts and tried to calm herself with casual conversation. "Take an extra pair of socks," she had insisted. "Why? What for?" He had laughed. "In case you soak the others. They won't take up much space and you won't catch a cold," she reasoned. "Did you pack the first aid kit? Good boy." "Mom, this isn't my first trip. Why are you so worried?" he asked, trying to reassure her, though she could sense his growing frustration. "But it's the first time you'll be gone this long," she replied. "Mom, trust me. All my friends' moms are worried too, but there's no need. Honestly, I can't imagine how you'll react when I get drafted into the army one day," he teased. "Let's not talk about that now," she said, brushing it off with a forced smile. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Their joking that day would be the last time she laughed. She would never laugh again. The first week of the trip passed, and Hannelore's anxiety subsided slightly. Everything was fine with Ansel, but when the second week began, her worry returned. One evening they spoke briefly on the phone. Ansel's cheerful voice reassured her for a moment. "Go to bed," he told her after they chatted. She tried, but sleep was elusive. She kept thinking about her boy, sleeping in a tent in the woods. Was it cold? Damp? Were there mosquitoes? If anything happened, would she even know? Finally, exhaustion overtook her. But in the early morning she woke suddenly as if shaken awake. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding, and called out in fear, "Ansel!" She sat there trying to calm her racing heart. What's wrong with me? She thought. Was it a dream? A panic attack? But why? Oh God, what if something's happened to Ansel? He's so far away. Panic swept over her again. Hannelore turned on the light, walked through the apartment and peeked into her son's room. Everything was in order, just as it always was. What was wrong? The thought of going back to bed didn't even occur to her. She couldn't sit still. She paced the apartment as though trying to escape some looming disaster. Unable to bear it any longer, she grabbed her phone. Surprised by the tremor in her hands, she wanted to call her son, but it was the middle of the night. He was sleeping, likely with his friends in the tent. No matter, she would call anyway. Let him complain. Let him say whatever he wanted. She couldn't wait until morning. She dialed his number, listening to the endless ringing until a mechanical voice informed her that the subscriber wasn't available. "I can hear that he's not answering," she muttered aloud. "What now?" Trying to calm herself, she reasoned. They're all asleep, still tired from running around in the fresh air. They're young. They don't wake up in the middle of the night like me. Calm down. Call again in an hour. He'll give you an earful for panicking, but at least you'll know he's okay. Hannelore continued to pace the apartment, glancing at the clock until the sun rose and birds began to sing. It's probably okay to call now, she thought. But what if he doesn't answer again? Summoning her courage, she picked up the phone and dialed. "Ansel, please, just answer. Say everything's fine, and I promise I won't call again until you come home." No answer. The morning turned into a nightmare. Ansel didn't respond. None of his friends did either. Even the instructor, Nathan, wasn't answering his phone. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Yet, in those torturous hours of uncertainty, there was still hope. By midday, that hope was gone. Hannelore learned that her son was no longer alive. He had drowned at dawn. The nightmare began. Hannelore barely remembered what happened after the instructor's call. She screamed, refusing to believe the news, then froze as if dying herself. Her husband, who had returned by then, called for an ambulance. They gave her injections, though she didn't care. Days turned into nights, and the sun might have shone sometimes, but none of it mattered anymore. She saw her husband crying, heard his anguished accusations. "It's your fault he joined that adventure club. Why did you let him go on that trip?" His tears and blame were his way of coping. He threatened to sue everyone to prove that someone's negligence had caused their son's death. Why is he gone while everyone else is still alive? Who is to blame? He wept. Hannelore had no such outlet. She couldn't cry. She knew who was at fault. It was her. She was his mother. Everyone else was alive, but Ansel was not. That meant nothing else mattered. An investigation revealed no one to blame. Everything had been routine, witnesses said. Terrified teenagers facing death for the first time told the investigator, "No one hurt Ansel. No, we weren't fighting. He didn't even say he wanted to swim at dawn. We all went to bed as usual, and so did he. We thought we heard someone calling for help, but it seemed like a dream, and we fell asleep again." No one was guilty. Ansel drowned because he went into the water alone. That was all. Hannelore didn't care about the findings. She was focused on preparing for her son's funeral. She moved through the days on autopilot, forcing herself to breathe, walk, eat, and drink. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She avoided looking at the closed door of Ansel's room. Life continued even though hers had ended. People say grief brings others closer together, but not all grief does, and not all people. Hannelore and her husband shared the greatest sorrow imaginable, the loss of their son. But perhaps they had lost each other long before. After Ansel's death, they began avoiding one another. They didn't cry on each other's shoulders, didn't hold hands. Even when alone in the apartment, they avoided eye contact. This made the pain even more unbearable. Sometime after the funeral, perhaps on the 9th day, perhaps later. Who was counting? Hannelore saw her husband packing his things. "I'm sorry, Hannelore, but this is for the best. Maybe I shouldn't leave now, but our living together has lost all meaning. Don't worry, I won't claim the apartment. I'll file for divorce myself. If you need anything, call me." "Okay," she replied indifferently. Her heart, scorched by the greatest tragedy of her life, didn't react to his words. Losing him seemed insignificant compared to losing her son. When the door closed behind her now ex-husband, the apartment felt emptier and colder than ever. "Let it be for me as it is for you, my son," she thought. "I died too. I no longer exist." Hannelore found no solace in those around her. Before the tragedy, she had been sociable with many friends and acquaintances. Surely now, of all times, she shouldn't have been alone. And yet she was. At first, people rushed to offer support, help, and sympathy, but instead of the lively, beautiful, and intelligent Hannelore they had known, they encountered a dried-up, reclusive shell of a woman. It was understandable. Her grief was unimaginable. People didn't know how to respond, how to act. Many had faced hardships and losses themselves, but Hannelore's world had utterly collapsed, and she needed no one in these terrible moments. "Yes, yes, thank you. I'm fine. Everything is fine," she would say, turning away, retreating into herself. There was nothing anyone could do to change it. People soon realized that they couldn't help Hannelore. Moreover, she wasn't in a state to accept any help. "We're probably just making it harder for her," someone said. "It's better to leave her alone, let her work through it in her own time. What happens after that, no one knows." And so, people decided not to burden her with their sympathy, advice, or attempts to console her. Some even believed that grief was contagious. Many of Hannelore's friends were mothers themselves, with children around Ansel's age, children with their own hobbies and risks. It frightened them to enter the circle of misfortune that seemed to invisibly surround Hannelore. She was left alone in that circle, and she wasn't upset by it. Being alone felt easier. A while after the funeral, she returned to work, trying to at least outwardly pull herself together. But Hannelore was no longer the person she used to be. She had changed so drastically that even those who had known her for years didn't recognize her, not just in appearance, but in spirit. Though she performed her duties without error, as she always had, everything else was different. Hannelore knew her co-workers found it hard to be around her. They continued living their lives, with their own concerns and joys. The team, mostly women, naturally discussed their personal and family matters during breaks, talked about their children and husbands, and sometimes joked and laughed. But none of this felt possible in Hannelore's presence. To them, it seemed almost sacrilegious to behave normally around someone who had lost everything. She wouldn't talk about children, husbands, or anything light-hearted. She hadn't smiled since the day her son died. Hannelore herself understood how much her presence burdened others. She couldn't change, of course. Her grief was a permanent part of her, and she knew she'd remain this way forever. But she didn't want to ruin others' moods or worsen the atmosphere at work. So she approached her manager and requested a transfer to the dispatch office. "Why are you hiding yourself away?" the manager asked. "You're doing your job well and the pay there is much lower." "It's enough for me," Hannelore replied, her words few and heavy. "You understand, it's hard for me, and it's hard for everyone else when I'm around." "Some say grief is easier to bear together," he tried to reason, though he clearly understood. Without further discussion, he signed her request. From that point on, Hannelore worked alone in a small room, answering phone calls, handing out keys and processing paperwork. It was harder work, but she never considered returning to her old position. She brought books to read during quiet moments. Not novels, though. Stories about love, happiness, or motherhood were unbearable. Instead, she read history books, immersing herself in events from long ago. Those stories offered a strange solace. The world had experienced so much before her time, before Ansel's time. People had suffered, died, and yet life had gone on. But for Hannelore, there was no going on. Her small dispatch room felt like a tomb, a place she had locked herself into willingly. Before Hannelore took over, an older, cheerful woman had worked there, and people often gathered around her to chat. Now, anyone who encountered Hannelore's hollow gaze hurried away as quickly as possible, after work, Hannelore returned to her empty, lifeless apartment, which felt more like a crypt with each passing day. But then, she discovered that one corner of the home still held a spark of life: Ansel's room. It was as though the spirit of its young, absent owner still lingered there. Everything was just as Ansel had left it. Books, notebooks, pencils, discs, and other objects whose purpose or names Hannelore didn't know or had forgotten. She avoided touching anything, afraid of disturbing the essence of her son that seemed to fill the room. Once a week she carefully dusted the surfaces and vacuumed the carpet, but no more than that. In the evenings she would sit in the room for hours, talking to Ansel as if he was still alive. How could she not treasure her solitude? If anyone found out about her habits, they might think she had lost her mind, force her into treatment, or, worst of all, insist on clearing out Ansel's room. That thought terrified her. No, everything would stay as it was. Ansel would remain there. She wasn't mad. He was simply the only person she could still talk to. He couldn't answer, but Hannelore was certain he could hear her and was somehow nearby. Even when she visited his grave every week, she didn't feel the same connection she felt in his room. At the cemetery, he seemed truly gone, but in his room, he felt alive. It was likely this connection that helped her survive, to regain some sense of herself, and to not completely lose her grip on reality in her overwhelming grief. Each evening, after her lonely hours in the dispatch office, she would rush home to talk to her son. She told him everything about her day, complained, and sought advice. No, she didn't hear his voice or see his ghost, but the act of speaking made her feel lighter, as if she was still part of the world in some way. A year passed, then another. Slowly, people began to forget the tragedy that had befallen Hannelore. Their lives moved forward. Those who hadn't known her before wondered why the dispatcher was so gloomy and withdrawn. "Just seeing her ruins my mood," a young co-worker complained one day. "Couldn't she at least look a little more approachable? She's not even that old." "Yeah, but I heard she lost someone," her friend replied. "Everyone loses someone," the first woman retorted. "I've lost plenty of relatives. My grandma, my uncle last summer. I cried and moved on. I don't go around making everyone else miserable with a sour face." Hannelore overheard the conversation, and perhaps it was even meant for her to hear. She sighed heavily. Her grief still held her captive. If, for a fleeting moment, she managed to forget her son, the return to thoughts of him brought even greater pain. She wished she could distract herself, even for a while, to escape her sorrow. One morning, as she prepared for work, she hesitated. Resolutely, she set aside the black blouse she had been wearing since Ansel's death. For 5 years, her wardrobe had been exclusively black. This time, she reached for something different, not colourful or bright, but not black either. When she put it on, she realised that clothing could indeed affect her mood, and even the expression on her face. But did she have the right to step away from her mourning? Would this offend her son's memory? Would people think she was ready to return to life, when in truth, she was not? Still, from that day on, Hannelore made a small change. She decided she couldn't keep being a scarecrow for others, someone who darkened the mood wherever she went. "I'm not that old yet," she thought. "People probably call me a witch or hag behind my back. Maybe it's this very image that insults Ansel's memory. He loved seeing me look good." That evening she sat in Ansel's room and spoke to him. "What do you think, son? Should I start wearing a little makeup for work?" she asked aloud. She shivered at her own words. There was no reply, but at that moment, a small bird landed briefly on the windowsill, hopped a few times, and flew away. "Well, all right then," Hannelore decided with a faint smile. Gradually, the atmosphere around her dispatch room began to change. People no longer avoided her with a shiver of discomfort. She wasn't cheerful or young, but she became a quiet, serious woman who looked after herself, dressed decently, and carried out her duties diligently. It seemed as though she was doing well, or at least that was the impression she gave. However, Hannelore never seriously considered changing her life. She believed that change wasn't for her. 5 years into her now familiar solitude, Hannelore lost her job. She wasn't fired but was made redundant. The dispatch position was no longer needed at their struggling enterprise. The layoffs affected many, but Hannelore, not being an invalid, a single mother, or someone with many dependents, was among the first to go. She lost her small but steady salary. With no significant savings, she had to figure out how to survive. But there was no one to ask for advice. She had isolated herself, and she didn't blame anyone for that. Even if there had been someone, what could they have said to help her? She had no influential acquaintances to pull strings, make arrangements, or provide real assistance, only sympathy, which she needed least of all. In this, however, Hannelore still had someone to talk to. Her son, her only companion, her confidant for the past few years. He couldn't answer her, but she could speak her thoughts aloud, working through her predicament. Perhaps by talking it through she would find a solution. In the evening, Hannelore entered her son's room and sat in her usual spot, a chair placed beside his bed. She sighed deeply and began to speak. "Well, Ansel, my life has completely lost its meaning. I'm out of a job, or rather, I was let go. Budget cuts, they said. I guess I wasn't needed, not at work, not in this world. Today I collected my final paycheck. Tomorrow I have nowhere to go. It's terrifying, son. I wasn't particularly needed at work. But without it, what do I do? How will I pay rent? How will I live? And honestly, do I even want to live? If only you could take me with you. There must be a place for me where you are, right?" After this, Hannelore made a decision to tidy up Ansel's room and sort through his belongings for the first, and perhaps the last, time. That's when she found it. A brightly coloured card. On the front, it read, "I love you, Mom." She sank back into her chair, clutching the card to her chest as tears streamed down her face for the first time in years. "I love you too, Ansel," she whispered. "You were the only person who loved me, the only one who has never truly left me, even now. Why don't you say something, my darling? Give me some kind of sign." She glanced at the window, half expecting another bird to appear, as one had once before. But no sign came. It seemed that if she wanted to talk to her son, she would have to go to where he was now. Though no one could say for sure if there was even a place where he still existed. But here, in this life, there's nothing left. Only grief, despair, and loss. Now I know that for certain. Clutching the card tightly, she left Ansel's room and walked to the kitchen. She turned on the kettle, reheated some food, ate mechanically, washed the dishes, and returned to her bedroom. Exhausted and drained, she collapsed into bed and fell asleep immediately. That night, she dreamed of Ansel. For the first time, the dream was vivid and filled with meaning. His face remained blurry, but his voice was unmistakable, calm and wise, like that of someone who had seen and understood more than she could imagine. "You're not alone, Mom," he said. "Don't you feel it? I'm always with you. I see that you know this, but it's hard for me too. You don't realize how much it hurts me that you can't let go." "Let go? How can I let go, Ansel?" she asked. "If I let go, it'll be like forgetting you, like saying goodbye forever. I can't do that." "Letting go doesn't mean forgetting," he replied gently. "It doesn't mean losing me forever. It means not holding on to the pain, not letting it consume you. It means living your life, because it's not over yet. Mine ended, but yours hasn't. It should have continued. But you stopped living, stuck in the day I left. And that's not what I want for you." "I can't, Ansel. For me, everything ended that day. And now, without work, it's over for good. I have nothing left to live for." "If you give up now, Mom, neither of us will find peace, and we'll never see each other again. Do you realize how much pain you would cause my soul if you went through with what you're thinking, But if you find happiness again, I'll be happy too. I can't explain how, but trust me, I'll help you. Pray for me, Mom, and let yourself be happy. Do it for me." "But how can I be happy without you?" she asked through tears. "I'm always with you," he answered. "Live for me. Be happy for me. I'll help you. I know it's hard, but the love you wanted to give me, give it to someone else who needs it. I'll help you find that person." "What person?" Hannelore asked, confused. "I don't need anyone but you." She woke up suddenly, her face wet with tears. The dream had felt so real, and she remembered every word. Still, she couldn't imagine who her son might mean, or how he could help her. The idea of loving someone else, even in a different way, felt impossible. As she wandered through the apartment searching for signs of Ansel's presence, she thought, if we just talked, maybe he was really here. Or maybe I am losing my mind. After all, 5 years like this would drive anyone mad. The morning was grey, cold and rainy, typical late autumn weather. From the window, Hannelore watched people hurrying to work, wishing she had somewhere to go. They'd probably envy me for staying in a warm house, but I envy them for having somewhere to be, something to do. She decided not to stay home. She'd go to the cemetery to talk to Ansel again. As she left, she noticed the fine, cold rain, but didn't bother returning for an umbrella. Pulling her scarf over her head, she hoped the rain would stop soon. When she reached Ansel's grave, she sighed, rested her hand on the cold, wet metal of the fence and wondered, will Ansel have anything to say to me today? She heard nothing, but suddenly it felt as though a hand, her son's hand, gently rested on hers. It didn't frighten her, but instead brought a faint smile to her face. "I'm letting you go, Ansel," she whispered. "I want you to be at peace wherever you are now. For you, I'll do anything." The rain intensified, and the sky grew darker, as if night were falling, though it was still before noon. Yet Hannelore's heart felt light. She had fulfilled her son's request. She would no longer cling to him, but instead, she would try to live her own life, or at least learn how to, after so long trapped in her grief. She looked at her son's photograph on the headstone and smiled back at his smiling face. "You'll always be with me. You promised," she said quietly. "And you'll help me. Right, Ansel? I'm going home now. I'm going to live, my dear. Thank you for showing me the way." As she walked down the cemetery path past the gravestones, she glanced at the photos and dates etched into them. There were the elderly who had lived full lives, but there were also so many young people, lives cut short. And for each of them, grieving parents were left behind, suffering as she had. How do these parents bear their sorrow, she wondered? Where do they find solace? The cemetery was empty. Rainy workdays were not ideal for visits. As Hannelore walked, she noticed a small, solitary figure crouched inside one of the plots. From a distance, it looked like a discarded bag of trash perhaps left behind during someone's preparations for winter. But as she approached, she realized with a shock that it was a child. A small boy, no older than 7, was huddled by a gravestone, leaning against the iron fence, unmoving. The sight was both strange and deeply unsettling. "What are you doing here?" Hannelore called out, stepping closer. The boy replied in a hoarse voice, "Nothing." "You can't sit here like this, you'll catch cold. Why are you here? Is someone you know buried here?" Her heart tightened as she looked at the lonely child. "My mom and dad," he said. "They died in a car accident." Hannelore's chest ached at his words. This is real grief, she thought. He's just a child, no more than 7, maybe younger, and he's sitting here alone at his parents' grave. What right do I have to complain about my life? "I'm here for my son," Hannelore said softly, for reasons she didn't fully understand. "He drowned when he was 16. 16? That's a lot," the boy replied. "I'm only 7. "That's plenty old enough to know you can't sit on cold, wet ground. You'll get sick. Come on, stand up." What difference does it make? The boy muttered. No one cares about me anymore. Don't say that, my dear, Hannelore said, her voice trembling. Of course someone cares about you. You must have relatives. Why are you here alone? Did you run away? I don't have any relatives, the boy replied. I ran away from the orphanage. It's horrible there. The older boys pick on us. They make us smoke and steal. But I don't want to. I don't want to go back there. I'd rather die and be buried here with my parents. Hannelore was horrified. The boy's words echoed thoughts she herself had wrestled with not long ago. But for a 7-year-old to think this way? You're out of your mind, she said sharply before softening her tone. Come on, get up. Let's go. The boy obeyed, standing slowly. His face was wet, not just from the rain, but from tears. Hannelore wrapped her arm around his small, shivering shoulders. You're a brave boy for not listening to bad people. Their ways only lead to trouble. Don't cry. You need to be happy, for your parents' sake. If they see you're all right, they'll be happy too. Do you mean up there? In heaven? The boy asked, his wide eyes gazing at her. Yes, Hannelore nodded. They'll watch over you and help you, you'll see. But for now, let's get to know each other. My name is Hannelore Osterman, but you can call me Auntie Hannelore. What's your name? Jareth, he said quietly. Well, Jareth, it's nice to meet you. Let's head to a nearby cafe. It's warm there, and we can have some hot tea. After that, we'll figure things out. Give me your hand. The boy placed his cold, trembling hand in hers, and together their icy, wet hands began to warm. At the cafe, Hannelore ordered tea and pastries. Jareth warmed his hands on the cup, but his face remained troubled. What do you mean by, we'll figure things out? He asked cautiously. If it means going back to the orphanage, I won't go. I'd rather go back to the cemetery. Wait, Jareth, forget about the cemetery for now, Hannelore said firmly. Do you want to upset your parents? They wouldn't want that, would they? No, Jareth admitted, his voice trembling. But if they can help me, why don't they? What else can I do? Not everything happens at once, Jareth, Hannelore said gently. But why aren't you eating your pastry? Are you not hungry? I'm not hungry, the boy replied. I ran away right after breakfast. They feed us well there, actually. I ate everything because I didn't know when I'd get to eat again. But I'll eat the pastry. I promise. See? Hannelore said with a faint smile. The orphanage isn't all bad. They feed you well, but you'll have to go back. There's no other way. I'll take you there myself. You see, I'd love to take you home with me. I live alone now, but that wouldn't be right. You're not my child, and I'd be accused of kidnapping. No one would care, Jareth said, shaking his head. They won't even notice I'm gone. You're wrong about that, Hannelore said firmly. I'm sure they've already reported you missing to the police. If they see us together, I'll get in trouble. But here's what I'll do. I'll take you back to the orphanage and talk to the staff. I'll make sure they don't let anyone hurt you. I'll visit you as often as I can. And if you like me, maybe, just maybe, I can adopt you. What do you think? Really? Jareth's eyes lit up with cautious hope. The boy couldn't believe it. They say older kids like me never get adopted. People only take the little ones. Well, maybe others don't adopt older kids, Hannelore replied gently. But I want someone exactly like you. And isn't it better that they don't adopt older kids? At least no one else will take you but me. After all, we're already friends, aren't we? I guess so, the boy smiled shyly. I like you too. And I like you, Hannelore said, her heart warming. So you have no family at all? No, they've all passed away. My grandparents too. They're buried there, Jareth said, pointing toward the cemetery. They say I have an uncle, my dad's brother, but I've never met him. He lives somewhere far away, I think. He might not even know I exist. Well then, Hannelore said with quiet determination, no one will stop me from adopting you. I have an apartment, and soon I'll have a job. Just not right now, and then we'll be together. I even have a room for you. It used to belong to my son, Ansel. Her heart ached for a moment at the thought of giving Ansel's room to someone else, but then she realised this was the help Ansel had promised. She was needed now, by this boy. It no longer mattered that Ansel's space would change. It was the right thing to do. After warming up and eating his pastry, Jareth seemed more cheerful. He confidently led Hannelore to the orphanage, but as they neared, he turned to her with wide, worried eyes. "Auntie Hannelore, you won't lie, right? You'll really come visit me?" "Of course I'll visit," Hannelore reassured him. "I promise." "And what will you tell the caregivers?" he asked anxiously. "Don't tell them I tattled about the boys teaching bad things. They do, but being a tattletale isn't good. Just say I missed my mom and dad and went to the cemetery." "All right," Hannelore agreed. "We'll say that. But I'll still need to talk to the caregivers about visiting you. I hope we'll be together soon, maybe even by Christmas." "Wow, Christmas!" Jareth's eyes lit up, though he quickly added, "That's so far away." "Not really," Hannelore said with a smile. "Just 3 months," she thought. "Time will fly." When they arrived at the orphanage, a woman, likely a caregiver, exclaimed, "Ah, here's our little adventurer." She turned to Hannelore. "Where did you find him? Thank you for bringing him back. He hasn't been here long and still hasn't adjusted." "It's hard to adjust," Hannelore said with a sigh. "But please don't scold him too much. He's a good boy. He was at the cemetery, visiting his parents' graves." "Oh, poor thing," the woman said, softening her tone. "Don't worry, we weren't planning to scold him. He's had a rough time." Turning back to Jareth, she added, "Come on, let's get you changed out of those wet clothes. Who's going to deal with you if you get sick?" "I'm not sick, I'm tough," Jareth replied confidently, making Hannelore smile. After the caregiver escorted Jareth away, Hannelore waited for her to return and explained her intentions. "You see," Hannelore began, "this boy touched my heart. I've been alone for so long. My son passed away 5 years ago, and my husband left after that. I never thought about something like this before, but when I saw Jareth, I realised that I need to adopt a child. Without that, my life has no purpose. I'm 43, I might have many years ahead, but the thought of living them like this is unbearable." The caregiver nodded sympathetically. "I understand, but adoption is something you'll need to discuss with the director. As for visits, we can arrange that. Just promise you won't change your mind. Some people get emotional when they see a child, make all kinds of promises, but then go home, think about it and decide it's not worth it. The child waits and waits, but nothing ever happens." "That won't happen with me," Hannelore said firmly. "I've spent 5 years wondering why I'm still alive, and now I think I've found the answer. Maybe Jareth needs my love and care. Maybe this is what I'm meant to do." The director later granted Hannelore permission to visit Jareth. However, adoption presented challenges. The main issue was that Hannelore lacked a stable job, which was a strict requirement. "I'll find a job," Hannelore assured the director. "I have everything else, an apartment, all my documents, no debts. I'll do whatever it takes." "That's good," the director said. "Find a job, and we'll go from there. Your apartment will need to be inspected to ensure it's suitable for a child, but beyond that, there shouldn't be any major obstacles. Jareth doesn't have close relatives, except for an uncle who's never been involved in his life and likely doesn't even know about him." Hannelore returned home feeling uplifted. A new life full of meaning and love seemed within reach. She began planning her first visit to Jareth, thinking about how she might redecorate Ansel's room for him. But first she needed a job, and quickly. She didn't care what it was as long as the pay met the adoption requirements. As she mentally listed people she might ask for help, she realised she didn't have many connections. Some of her former co-workers had cried when they were let go, uncertain of where they'd find new work. Hannelore resolved to search through job ads if necessary. "Some people get lucky," she thought. "Maybe I'll be one of them." It seemed fate was indeed on her side. The very next day, her former boss, whom she had worked with for many years, unexpectedly called and asked, "Have you found a new job yet?" "Not yet, how could I? I just got laid off," Hannelore replied. "Well, do you have any plans? Maybe you want to take some time to rest?" "No, not at all. I don't need rest and I'm not that tired. What I really need is a job," she said firmly. "Good," her former boss, Harland, said. "I have a proposal for you. I left our old company too. I've joined a new firm started by a friend of mine, and I'm heading up a department. I want to bring in people I trust, people I've worked with. You're one of them, if you're interested. The pay is much better than what you earned at the dispatch office, and there are good prospects for growth." Hannelore was stunned. "Thank you so much, Harland. I didn't expect this at all. Honestly, I was at a loss about what to do next. My age and, well, my shortcomings." "What shortcomings?" he interrupted with a laugh. "Your age is perfect, and any shortcomings can be addressed. I know your strengths, and that's what matters. I'm confident this will work out." "So am I," Hannelore said, relieved. "Oh, and I might need a reference just in case." "Consider it done," he said with a grin. Before long, Hannelore had a stable job with a good salary. The new role gave her a sense of purpose, and to her surprise, she found herself with renewed energy. She did a thorough cleaning of Ansel's room, knowing it would soon belong to Jareth. She visited Jareth regularly, and within a few weeks she was allowed to take him home for weekend visits. "Wow, this will be my room!" Jareth exclaimed, his eyes lighting up as he explored the space. "This is awesome. I used to have a room, but it wasn't separate. It was connected to the living room. A separate room is way better. And with a balcony, too." "Yes, but for now, you can't go out on the balcony," Hannelore said. "I sealed the door to keep the draft out. We'll replace the windows and doors, maybe even enclose the balcony so you can use it in winter. But that's for next year." "That sounds great," Jareth said, then hesitated. "Auntie Hannelore, if you adopt me, you'll be like my mom, right?" "That's right," Hannelore said gently. "Does that bother you?" "No, I like it. I just don't know how to call you Mom. I had another mom, you know." "Of course you did, and you loved her very much," Hannelore said. "You can call me Auntie Hannelore. I don't expect you to call me Mom. It's good that you remember your parents. Do you think I could hang a picture of them on the wall?" "Of course, sweetheart, it's your room. You can do whatever you want with it." Jareth smiled, then asked cautiously, "Did you love your son a lot?" "Very much," Hannelore replied. "But you know, Jareth, I've realized he hasn't really gone anywhere. He's always with me." "Maybe I understand that better because I'm a kid," Jareth said thoughtfully. They didn't discuss such sensitive topics further, focusing instead on their future together. Hannelore looked forward to enrolling Jareth in school next year. Though he had missed starting first grade after his parents' death, she was confident he'd do well. His late mother had taught him to read and write. Hannelore's life, once dominated by sorrow, was now filled with hope and purpose. She no longer lived in the past, but looked forward to the future. Even the challenges ahead, raising a child alone, managing the teenage years, seemed welcome because they were a part of life. At night, she often asked Ansel silently, "Are you proud of me, my dear?" And in her heart, she felt his comforting smile. She had nearly completed the adoption process. All the necessary permissions were in place, and soon Jareth would be home with her. On her visits to the orphanage, she thought about how little time was left before she'd no longer need to come there. One day during a visit, the orphanage director invited Hannelore to her office. The director's expression was serious, even apologetic. "Please sit down, Hannelore," the director said, gesturing toward a chair. "What's happened? Is Jareth all right?" Hannelore asked, her voice filled with concern. "Yes, Jareth is fine. Please don't worry about him." "But—" The director hesitated, then continued. "I have some news for you, and I'm afraid it's not the kind you'd want to hear." Hannelore felt her heart sink. "What is it?" "Jareth's biological uncle has come forward. He wants to take the boy in." The news hit Hannelore like a thunderclap. Hannelore never expected such news. At first, she didn't even grasp the full weight of what she had just heard. What do you mean, take him away? Can he really do that? I've already collected all the documents and met every requirement. Yes, that's true, the director said with a sigh. But unfortunately, you haven't finalized the adoption process yet. The law gives priority to biological relatives, and his uncle has submitted all the necessary paperwork. He has the legal right to claim the boy. But how? Hannelore exclaimed. He doesn't even know Jareth, and we've been together for months now. We've already made plans for our life together. My home has become his home, not just for me, but for him too. And now, out of nowhere, this uncle shows up, someone who didn't even care enough to visit him before? It's not as simple as that, the director explained. The uncle had his own circumstances that prevented him from coming forward sooner. He says it's taken him nearly a year to sort things out. And what now? Hannelore asked, her voice trembling. What does Jareth say? I can't believe he'd willingly go live with a stranger, even if they're related by blood. Will his opinion matter at all? Unfortunately, Jareth is still under 10 years old, so his wishes aren't legally binding, the director replied. The decision will likely favour his biological uncle over you, as you're considered a non-relative in the eyes of the law. No, Hannelore said firmly, her voice shaking with emotion. I can't accept that. You're telling me a child can be taken away without his consent just because someone shows up with a document proving blood relation? And I, who have bonded with him, who love him, have no say? That's inhumane. I can't believe this is happening. Hannelore was on the verge of tears, but she knew pleading wouldn't help. I understand how you feel, the director said sympathetically. In many ways, I agree with you, but I'm bound by the law. That said, don't lose all hope just yet. Nothing is final. The decision might still go in your favour. Or it might not, Hannelore said bitterly. But can I at least see Jareth today? I'm afraid not, the director replied. That decision isn't mine to make. It was made in Jareth's best interest. Hannelore realised there was no point in arguing further. She asked the director to keep her informed of the final decision, said her goodbyes, and left. Outside, snow was falling, large, fluffy flakes that clung to the trees and blanketed the streets. It was the kind of snow that children loved. Hannelore and Ansel had often played in snow like this, and she had imagined doing the same with Jareth. They could have gone for a walk today, catching snowflakes on their tongues and admiring the snow-covered trees. Instead, she walked alone, her shoulders hunched, snow collecting on her coat and eyelashes, mixing with the tears she no longer bothered to hold back. Mascara smeared down her cheeks, but she didn't care. Who would notice? Who would even care? She sank onto a snow-covered bench, unable to take another step. The emptiness returned, along with a sense of hopelessness. Why does everyone leave me? She asked silently, looking up at the sky. Why is everything taken from me? Why give me hope, only to snatch it away? It would have been better not to have anything at all. She lowered her head, covering her face with her hands, and sat quietly as the snow fell around her. Miss, are you all right? Can I help you with something? A pleasant male voice broke through her despair. Great, just what I need. A kind stranger ready to offer sympathy, she thought bitterly. He'll console me, maybe even try to solve my problems. Sorry, mister, you've got the wrong woman. She raised her head and found herself face to face with a middle-aged man. I'm not a miss, she said flatly. And there's nothing you can do to help me. No one can. She tried to stand but found she didn't have the strength. The man handed her a pack of tissues without a word. It was a simple gesture, and Hannelore accepted it gratefully, wiping her face. Thank you, she said quietly, hoping he would leave. But he didn't. What's happened? He asked gently. I don't mean to pry, but you seem deeply upset. Is it worth it? Often people look back on their troubles later and realize they weren't as bad as they seemed. Most things can be solved, you know. Not everything, Hannelore said sharply. My problems can't be solved. If you don't want to hear something completely hopeless, you'd better turn around and walk away. But thank you for the tissues. Your good deed is done. She finally managed to stand and began walking down the street. Snow continued to fall and she expected the man to give up and leave her alone, but he didn't. Sorry, but I can't just walk away now, he said decisively, catching up to her. I need to hear your story. Believe me, sometimes just talking about your problems can be half the solution. This isn't idle curiosity, I promise. Well, Hannelore began hesitantly, her voice tinged with bitterness. Let's assume you're some kind of priest, wizard, or modern-day therapist who believes any problem can be talked away and forgotten. I'll warn you now, if at any point in my story you decide to leave, I won't think of you as a coward. You're under no obligation to listen to such confessions. But since you've insisted, here it is. She took a deep breath before continuing. 5 years ago, my son died, my only child, the most wonderful person in my life, and I was left completely alone. Tell me, how do you fix something like that? You don't. You just survive. For 5 years, I've been breathing, getting up early for work, and living in a kind of numbness. My husband left me right after the funeral, claiming our relationship had run its course. I don't know where he is now, and I don't care. I transferred to a job that required less interaction with people. No one needed to deal with my misery. But even that job ended recently when I was laid off. Hannelore paused, her voice thick with emotion. But then, a glimmer of hope. Not long ago, I met a boy, an orphan, about 7 years old. His parents had died, and he had no one. We bonded almost immediately. I began to think I could live again, that I could be needed by someone. I decided to adopt him. I prepared everything, the documents, my apartment, even his room. It seemed like my life was finally beginning again. And now... She stopped, swallowing hard before finishing. Now it's all been taken from me. The man listened intently, his expression calm and understanding. It sounds like something got in the way, he said softly. Why don't we step into that cafe over there? It's cozy, and we can continue this conversation without freezing out here. The weather may seem cold, but honestly, it's quite lovely. Hannelore hesitated but nodded, following him into the cafe. Once they were seated and had ordered their drinks, Hannelore continued. It turns out my Jareth, yes, I already think of him as mine, has a living uncle. He's suddenly appeared and wants to take Jareth. This man has every legal advantage because he's a blood relative and Jareth's only 7, so his opinion doesn't count. And me? I'm just some unrelated woman who wanted to adopt him. Now, not only can I not adopt him, but I might never even see him again. Her voice trembled, and tears threatened to spill once more. She felt helpless, as though the world were collapsing around her. Why wouldn't you be able to see him again? The man asked. Maybe the uncle won't mind you staying in Jareth's life. He might not even live nearby. Perhaps he has a wife or someone willing to help raise the boy. You should talk to him. Another city isn't another country after all. You can visit. It's not as far as it seems. Hannelore frowned, confused by his certainty. And how exactly do you know all this? The man looked at her with a mixture of regret and resolve. Because I'm the uncle, he said softly. My name is Sterling. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself earlier. I didn't realize who you were at first or what this conversation was about, but I can promise you this. I won't let you and Jareth be separated forever. Hannelore's jaw dropped. Thank you for your promise, she said after a moment. But why didn't you come for him sooner? Didn't you know his parents had died? That he was sent to an orphanage? Of course I knew, Sterling admitted. I thought about taking him in from the beginning, but I had my own circumstances to deal with. Life doesn't always allow us to do what we want when we want, does it? My situation wasn't as tragic as yours, but it wasn't simple either. At the time, I was going through a difficult divorce. My wife and I had been married for 15 years. No kids, No real relationship, to be honest. When we finally admitted it wasn't working, the divorce turned ugly. There were property disputes and I spent months couch hopping while we sorted it all out. Finally, things settled. I now have a stable home, one that's suitable for raising a child. And Jareth? Well, he's my only family left. Hannelore looked at him, her heart heavy. He's my only family too, she said quietly. Without him, there's no point to my life anymore. Please don't say that, Sterling said earnestly. We'll figure something out. Don't give up. Live for yourself, for the memory of your son, and for Jareth. He talks about you constantly. I've met him several times now, and I can see how much he loves you. You're so important to him. Maybe our meeting isn't a coincidence, Hannelore. For the first time, Hannelore looked at Sterling properly. He was about her age, a kind-looking man, clearly lonely but sincere. What do you mean, not a coincidence? She asked warily. Well, Sterling said thoughtfully, perhaps we're meant to work together for Jareth's sake. Maybe we can find a way to share the responsibility. After all, it's less than a day's journey between cities, and the cost of a ticket isn't outrageous. Hannelore couldn't help but feel skeptical. What does he mean, share? She wondered. How do you divide a child between two people? And yet, despite her doubts, she found herself considering his words. Hannelore's thoughts were a whirlwind of sadness and uncertainty, but somewhere deep inside, a small spark of something different began to grow. She couldn't quite identify it, but it felt like a long-forgotten emotion stirring back to life. Sterling noticed it too, those occasional glimmers in her eyes. It seemed as though she was trying to remember something, perhaps a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. I understand what you're thinking, Hannelore, Sterling said carefully. You don't want to lose Jareth, and you're worried about how difficult it will be to maintain regular contact. I have my work, you have yours, and soon Jareth will have school. It'll be hard for any of us to visit each other even once a week, and for people who care about each other, meeting only once a month feels far too little. Maybe I should just move to your city. There's not much holding me here. I only came for work. And work is important, of course, but I could find something similar where you are. He seemed to wrestle with his own thoughts, searching for the right solution. Let me propose something, Hannelore said, breaking the silence. Just hear me out, and don't interrupt. You could give up the idea of taking Jareth. I don't think he would object. He's already very attached to me. You would still remain his uncle, his blood relative, while I become his adoptive mother. Then we can work out the rest, how we live, how we meet, how we share time with him. You could move to my city, or I could move to yours, though that would be harder for me. Still, for Jareth's sake, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Over time, we'll figure things out. But right now, Jareth needs stability, and let's be honest, he needs a mother more than a father at this age. Sterling looked puzzled. How could I just give him up like that? He asked. You wouldn't be giving him up, Hannelore said firmly. He'd live with me, but you'd still be a part of his life. You could visit whenever you wanted, and when Jareth gets older, if he decides he wants to live with you, I won't stop him. Right now, though, he needs someone who understands the needs of a child his age. I have experience with that. Sterling leaned back, lost in thought. You might be right, he said slowly, but it's still hard for me to let go of my nephew. I think we should talk to Jareth about this together and see what he thinks. The next morning, they both went to the orphanage. This time, they were both admitted to meet Jareth, who came running toward them, arms wide open. You both came! This is great! He exclaimed, hugging them both tightly. But then he grew quiet, looking between them with a hint of worry. Auntie Hannelore, do you know that Uncle Sterling wants to take me too? I do, Jareth, Hannelore said gently. But let's talk about it later. For now, let's go for a walk. There's so much snow outside. It's perfect for playing. They spent a joyful hour outdoors playing in the snow and laughing. But as soon as they sat down in a nearby cafe, the mood shifted. Jareth, sensing the seriousness of the situation, grew quiet and glanced nervously between the two adults. Hannelore decided to speak first. "Jareth," she began carefully, "your uncle and I were talking about who you should live with. You know you're already a part of my home, but Uncle Sterling is your family too, your father's brother. We both love you very much, and we both want what's best for you." Jareth's eyes filled with tears. "Are you giving me up, Auntie Hannelore?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Never," Hannelore said firmly, her heart aching at his words. "But you can't live in two places at once. That's why we both came here today, to ask you what you want. We'll respect your choice, whatever it is." Both adults immediately felt a pang of guilt for placing such a heavy decision on the child. Jareth looked from one to the other, his small face filled with confusion and sorrow. "I don't know who to choose," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't want to choose." He burst into tears, burying his face in his hands. Sterling, clearly moved, placed a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "If that's how you feel, Jareth, then we won't make you choose," he said gently. "You know, I've been thinking, since I plan to move to this city anyway, why don't we combine our homes? We could find a bigger apartment where we can all live together. That way, we'll be one family." Jareth's tears stopped and his face lit up. "Really? That's a great idea," he exclaimed. "Then we can all be together like a real family. Auntie Hannelore, do you agree?" Hannelore, stunned by the sudden turn of events, nodded slowly. "Yes, Jareth," she said. "I agree." For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of true hope. Perhaps this meeting wasn't a coincidence after all. "These things take time, don't forget that," Hannelore reminded Jareth gently, her tone cautious but kind. While she smiled and nodded along with Sterling's enthusiastic promises, deep down, she remained more skeptical. She didn't want to dampen Jareth's excitement, but her own heart warned her not to get carried away. After walking Jareth back to the orphanage, the adults exchanged glances outside. "I think I may have overpromised," Sterling admitted sheepishly. "I mean, it was meant to comfort him, but I might have gotten ahead of myself. Now what? How are we going to make it work?" "I'm not sure," Hannelore replied with a wry smile. "But you're right. Comforting him was important. As for the rest, well, these things take time. The idea isn't bad at all, but we'll have to see how things unfold. Not everything depends on what we want." Sterling nodded thoughtfully. "True. It's just that the whole plan came to me so suddenly and I wanted to give him hope." "That's a good thing," Hannelore said. "For now, I'll focus on the adoption, and we'll let everything else follow naturally." The adoption process moved quickly, as Hannelore had been thorough in her preparations. Before long, she became Jareth's official mother, a role she embraced with all her heart. But combining their lives into one cohesive family turned out to be more complicated. It took nearly 2 years of adjustments, arrangements, and coordination. Finally, Hannelore, Sterling, and Jareth moved into a spacious 4-bedroom apartment, living together as a true family. Hannelore and Sterling eventually married, officially becoming parents to Jareth, who gradually grew accustomed to his new life. Their shared hardships had taught them to value family, kindness, and each other. As Hannelore prepared to celebrate her 45th birthday, she reflected on how much her life had changed. On the morning of her special day, she received a card from Jareth. On it, he had written, "Mommy, I love you." It was the first time he had called her Mom. Hannelore placed the card on a shelf, right next to the one she had found among Ansel's belongings years ago. "We're doing well," she thought, addressing her eldest son in her heart. "Are you happy, my dear?" For the first time in years, she felt certain of the answer.